Hello and welcome to our direct talk. Today, Ambassador Fisseha Asgedo will be joining us. Ambassador, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Ambassador, firstly, do you believe the international community understands the severity of the humanitarian crises in Tigray, especially the blockade on vital services that has significantly worsened the humanitarian situation in Tigray?
I do believe the international community understands the blockade, the siege. That does not mean the international community is acting accordingly for many reasons. But in terms of the severity of it, not only from what we brought to the attention of the international community, the government of Tigray, through its direct high contacts and also through its public diplomacy, through diaspora, there is no center of power, there is no corridor of power that is not aware of the blockade. Not only that, many in the international community, including those in the humanitarian sphere, such as the World Food Program, OCHA, and others and humanitarian agencies, has brought the attention of the siege, the international community. Therefore, I can only say there are those that willingly decided to ignore, not act, and there are those who are doing their best, but not being supported by members of the international community the extent we want them to. But I think you can fairly say that the international community is aware of the situation in Tigray.
Do you sense representatives of the international organization and countries understand the severity of the situation, though?
As I said earlier, in terms of understanding it, in terms of knowing it, yes, they do. Question is, are they acting accordingly? No. For obvious reasons, for many reasons, they are not. They are not responding. They are not doing pressure enough. When we say this, it is relatively speaking. There are those that are doing their best to alleviate this suffering. But in terms of understanding it, in terms of the number of people that are being killed every day, because the Addis Ababa government is using not only drones and tanks, but it is using food as a weapon of war. It has been covered from every angle. Not a single government or international organization can say we didn't know that, we haven't heard it. So it is just simply the answer: yes, they do know, but they are not acting accordingly, and that's for many reasons, geopolitical reasons, the way that Ethiopia is made, the way Ethiopia has portrayed itself, that we are in Africa, and the West usually says whatever happens in Africa is African problems, all that kind of things that we will understand. But in terms of, do they comprehend it? How many people are being are dying? How many are not getting enough food? The severity, the siege. It is their own international organizations and academic institutions that are reporting, not only us. Therefore, it is in their conscience. They do know, they do understand it, but they are not acting as they should.
While many might say that the human rights issues have come to the center of diplomacy over the past few decades, would you say that the international response to the crisis in Ukraine in relations to Tigray indicates otherwise?
Well, it goes without saying, the case of Ukraine and Russia is completely different from the case of Tigray versus Addis Ababa government. First of all, as your first question indicates, Tigray got the attention, especially at the early stage of this genocidal war, because of the humanitarian crisis, because crimes were committed against the people of Tigray. The international communities could not ignore that. Whereas Russia, it started from a completely different view, you call it politics, ideology. This is Russia versus the rest of the West. It is their problem. They see it coming. They want to challenge the status quo. So did Russia. Therefore, it's not that the international community shifted its view from Tigray to Ukraine. It has been there all along. Within minutes and hours, they received all kind of support internationally. Billions of dollars is being poured to Ukraine, but at the same time, the humanitarian situation in Tigray, from their point of view, kind of is kicking into their conscience. They wanted to do something because others say you have already ignored what is the highest crisis in the world at this time for the sake of political and ideological reasons. It has also affected because the international community has also shifted its humanitarian attention to Ukraine. The World Food Program is now saying there isn't enough funds to all kind of victims in Ethiopia, including Tigray, because the international community, the donors have already shifted the humanitarian support to Ukraine. So in all cases, Ukraine is now the center of attention, both in terms of humanitarian and political and what have you.
Would it be wrong for someone to assume that starting a negotiation process with the Ethiopian government in a way legitimizes Abiy Ahmed and may make it more difficult for there to be accountability for the atrocities committed in Tigray?
I don't think so. Negotiating with the Addis Ababa government does not give it any legitimacy. You negotiate to achieve what you would have achieved otherwise. If you say the government of Addis is illegitimate, what do? Either you defeat it militarily, or you bring it to the negotiating table, so long as you achieve the same objective. For example, if you are going to come to stop a war, agreed on a ceasefire, and go to a political solution, if your agenda number one is you cannot continue to govern Ethiopia, you cannot continue to govern the people of Tigray because you have committed genocide against them, and therefore we have to have some kind of agreement where you are not the legitimate government, but we all in Ethiopia who we are stakeholders. Let's have some kind of transitional arrangement, and you're not the sole government in Ethiopia. We are saying the same thing. You're not legitimate to continue. So just because you negotiated with the government does not necessarily mean you are accepting it in the long haul.
A recent letter written by President Debretsion Gebremichael said that it will only participate in the negotiation process led by the Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta and the U.S. government. Does this mean that the government of Tigray will not accept a negotiation process led by the African Union's Special Envoy, former President of Nigeria, Olusegun Obasanjo?
Well, that is not a letter's spirit is. We have accepted in good faith the mediation of the former president of Nigeria, Obasanjo, Chief Obasanjo.
Okay.
From day one, we have made it clear to himself, to the international community, to all those that are around this conflict resolution, the United States, the European Union, Kenya, and others, that we accepted the special envoy at his personal level, out of respect for an African statesmanship. And the whole international community was behind him.
Okay.
And therefore, the choice was either we accept a special envoy appointed by the Commissioner for AU, on whose our view is very clear, who sounds like a cabinet member of the Addis Ababa government, who has supported the war against Tigray, and yet we did accept with that caveat. And the international community told us we'll be behind him. They pronounced themselves that they support the African Union in welcoming the special envoy. And therefore, from the outset, we have made it to former President Obasanjo. We know about his track record, his affinity with the Prime Minister, his blessing to this fake Ethiopian election. And yet, if he was going to work diligently, we will accommodate him, we will listen to him. After all, he is a mediator. And that was made clear to him and also to others. Through time, as we indicated to the international community, as the letter says, the special envoy has not accomplished much. Even whatever small steps we have, such as the cessation of hostilities, was not negotiated by him, but they went them up front. And this time we are saying, yes, we are not saying you're not included. You are just one of the mediators. We wanted others to be there. We wanted the Americans to be there, the European Union to be there. United Arab Emirates have shown interest, and we want them to play a positive role as opposed to supporting a genocidal government. And therefore, the African Union is not the sole mediator. This happens, and this is not a condition. We're not saying if you are the only one. They have been there all along. He has been working with them. Now we're saying let's have it. Let's have a negotiation with the presence of others in addition to yourself, which means Obasanjo will be a member of a negotiating team, as opposed Obasanjo single-handedly negotiating, reporting to Musafaki approving his negotiating process. That's not acceptable to us. As much as we respect the continental organization, it has utterly failed us, and we don't want to go back there. But we really wanted also to work with the former president, just as a member of a team. That's what we're saying. In terms of the last, our position is we have started initial third-party contacts via the United States. Kenya is in the center of it. They were working with them, and we don't see any reason to go to Arusha. We have nothing against Tanzania. We have nothing against Obasanjo being part of the team. But why do we have to go somewhere when, in fact, we have started involved Kenya so far that has proven to be a neutral broker.
And if that's the case, could you tell us why your government hadn't made any open statements on its reservation regarding the former president at any point in the past year, while the special envoy has been traveling between Mekelle and Addis Ababa?
It's not helpful. There was no reason, just because we felt from day one Obasanjo may not be a neutral observer. We told him, we told the other partners, it is not, you have to understand the whole international community was behind him. So we have told to those that are in the middle of it, but to publicly say, we don't see you as a neutral, we have our reservations, and the same engage him. We just have to give him. By the way, when you have a person like that, and we tell him, by the way, we are accepting you for such and such reasons. We know you before. You've worked with the late Prime Minister Mellas. He's one of the chairman or co-chairman of the Tana Forum. He knows Ethiopia closely. He is relatively a respected African statesman. We accept you because of this, but we also know that your track record of the past year. You haven't said anything against us, but you are close to the Prime Minister of Ethiopia. Which means when you tell a mediator like this, you will think you will be as neutral as possible, because every time he takes an action or says something, he knows that we consider him close to the Prime Minister. And he tried his best, but as I said, we were proven right. In that case, we said you should be helped by others. The Prime Minister is trying to manipulate and use your closeness to him to his advantage, and we're not going to tolerate this. We told him, and we all other partners know, the European Union know, but to publicly say this before, just because our suspicion was there, we didn't find it helpful. It doesn't, diplomacy and negotiation don't go this way. But when the time comes, when he's trying to marginalize countries like Kenya, and move to other places without consent, when he's not consistent in involving others that are working very hard to bring us to the negotiating table, we have to put it on the record. And I don't think it is not. We have to take the timing into account. The time was very important to tell the international community we have come so far. Also, if you see now, when we say he is not the only one who's going to be mediating, no one in the international community raises anything. They were already ready for it. They knew what was happening. Nobody showed any concern. Nobody objected to it. All are saying, yes, you are right. We are willing to help. And I think the former president will also understand that.
It's been a year since the government of Tigray has retaken the regional capital. Would you say that there is more organized diplomatic front now than before?
By far, yes, I do. Because when the government of Tigray was not in its seat, as much as we worked and our diaspora did what amounts to a miracle diplomatic work, given the circumstances, the international community, many in the international community felt that we will not survive, that we are not there. Even if we were done wrong, many sympathizers, supporters, those that has goodwill to the people of Tigray and understanding what is happening to them, told us that almost you ought to give up. You cannot come out of this war. The Ethiopian government's full army, the Eritrean army, the Amhara region Fanos and vigilantes and what have you, the mobilization of all those special forces from all parts of Ethiopia, the involvement of United Arab Emirates, Turkey, China, Iran, is unbelievable. The blessing of the United States Trump administration, the political clout that the Prime Minister Abiy has then in his hands from the international community. Therefore, as much as we worked hard to tell the international community, we are not yet to be dismissed that easily. When we are not there, many people thought that was it. 10, 15 years of a guerrilla fighting for all of you again to go back to what you did in the 80s and 90s. When our government returned to its seat, it returned with strength, a formidable army that the international community felt they have to reckon with. It's a reality. Therefore, we had the same diplomatic moves. We have the same vision to tell the international community, but we were also present on the ground. We came out of this, out of all the sides. We defeated this army, and then we complemented with our diplomatic activities at the highest level, not only through the diaspora, but with a very few contacts, but very effective contact with our leadership. And even though, given the circumstances on the ground, the suffering that we are going through, people can say, how we delivered in terms of the international community, but we have shown to the world that not only we can defend ourselves, we are warriors, we are resilient people, but we also have strategic thinking in place. And that's why right now the international community says we have to play a constructive role in the Horn of Africa. They consider us a force to reckon with in good faith to bring peace and stability, not only to Ethiopia, but to the rest of the region. For years, our diplomatic work has been elevated. We now matter to the world, and also we have come a long way not to be dismissed.
Do you see any areas where there is a failure to properly communicate the situation in Tigray? And what more do you think Tigrayan media houses and activists can do, or in what way can we moderate our message to better attract the international audience?
Personally, I don't think I have seen any failure as such. Yes, there is always room for improvement. As everybody knows, we are completely disconnected from the rest of the world. There were times where those of us that are representing the Tigray government abroad could not even talk to our superiors. We could not even connect to them for a simple message, let alone have deep thoughts and what have you. And therefore, given the circumstances, as I said earlier, against all these odds, when everybody was writing us off, we have done a lot. Our community has done a lot. Of course, the Tigray Defense Forces have shown what we are capable of, complemented by our diplomatic activities outside the world. And there is a whole lot of things to be done, but we have not failed the Tigray people. Our diplomacy, it is a public diplomacy. We're not a government per se, we're not a country. We are a regional government. We have no access to international organizations legally. We have to knock at doors and go to streets. And the whole world has been aware of what's happening in Tigray because of this public diplomacy. And the small doors are open for us because we have served at the country level, some of us, and we use that just simply to get attention until we explain ourselves. And our media, our public relations are not to the level that we want them to be. But failure, not at all. We have gone beyond what others in our circumstances could not achieve at all. Of course, we are critical of ourselves. We could do better, but every Tigrayan outside the country, intellectuals and what have you, have worked 24 hours. They continue to produce documents to lobby powerful governments and institutions, but there is much to be done, but not a failure. It's just to take it to the next level.
Ambassador, if there's anything you want to add at last.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity. There is a lot of activities going on from my end. The Tigrayan diaspora here in the United States, in Europe, they are working diligently. We have new organizational structures that empower the diaspora more than before. We have what we call government advisory councils, regional and multilateral, and therefore I wanted to send a message to all Tagaru back home that yes, we are not in the same situation that you are. We are in a better position in terms of how we live, how we act, but in the spirit, we are there. We are working day and day night, and the nightmare will be over sooner than later. And thank you.
Thank you for joining us, Ambassador. This wraps up our today's edition of Direct Talk. Thank you for tuning in.